You guys asked for it. I'm going to deliver it. Welcome into Chicago Bears Now. My name is Harrison Graham. It is time for a mock off season. I've done a perfect off season. I did a dream off season with Ben Johnson. This is going to be more of a, hey, this is the Bears cap situation. Here's what they can do with their money to add certain players via the draft, free agency, contract extensions, etc. Let's kind of dive into the nuts and bolts here first, which is, what does it look like right now? Well, they roughly have around $69 million in cap space. We don't know what the exact 2025 salary cap number is going to be just yet. That won't be announced for a few weeks here. So once we have that information, we will pass that along. The Bears could get above $80 million in projected cap space with a few cuts, maneuvers, etc. Obviously, Bears got 8 draft picks, including 3 in the top 41 picks. So good draft capital for Ryan Poles to work with this year as well. The full arsenal of draft picks, is as follows. I mentioned the 3 top 41 picks. You got that Panthers second in there. Got 72 as well. No fourth rounders as of now. Got a 5th, a 6th, and then 2 in the 7th. And a little side note, if Ian Cunningham does become the Jags GM, that would add a 3rd round pick this year and one next year. So that would only give the Bears more draft ammunition. Who's excited for the offseason? I know it's kind of been here for a few weeks, but, this coaching staff's rounding into form. Senior Bowl's been going on. Draft and free agency just around the corner. I'm fired up. I'm pumped up. Going to be a lot of fun here on this channel. If you agree, hit that like button. Okay, Bears mock offseason time. Number 1, to increase your cap, I'm cutting Gerald Everett and Ryan Bates. You just did not get what you signed up for with Gerald Everett. Sometimes it doesn't work out for whatever reason. The player declines. The team doesn't know what to do with them. But you could save $5.5 million by cutting him. It's just the guy didn't have 100 yards receiving. I think he's an obvious cut. And then Ryan Bates at $4 million. I could see a scenario where you cut him and then bring him back on a cheaper deal to be a top backup interior guy. Maybe you bring him back for $1-2 million bucks if he hits the market and doesn't find a deal. But he had an arthritic shoulder. He was in concussion protocol. I just think $4 million bucks for a guy who basically didn't play for you last year. Sucks you lost the 5th round pick in that trade, but it kind of just is what it is. You save $9.5 million bucks to trade 2 guys that essentially gave you nothing last year. So to me, that's a no-brainer. Could there be a situation where Ben Johnson comes in and says, I can do this with Gerald Everett, I can do that with Ryan Bates? Of course, but to me, I think these are 2 obvious cuts. $10 million bucks, that could be a high-level starter. That could be 2 contributors, whereas last year it was 2 nothings with Gerald Everett and Ryan Bates. That would get you to just under $80 million in projected cap space, which has you in a very good position as the offseason really gets ramped up with free agency and the NFL draft. Okay, let's get into free agency. I'm signing 2 starters on the interior offensive line. Trey Smith, who we've talked about, Drew Dalman, who we've talked about. We'll start with Trey Smith here. Or actually, we'll take a look at the offensive line depth chart here. Darnell Wright's going to be here. Braxton Jones is under contract. Whether he's a starter or not, that remains to be seen. But your entire interior is free agents, and you need a reboot there. Now, could you bring back a Matt Pryor as a backup? Could Coleman Shelton be back as a bridge guy if you don't get a Drew Dalman and you draft somebody? Perhaps. Could Tevin return depending on how his market is? Maybe. But I'm trying to get fresh blood in here and high-level players. And Trey Smith, to me, is by far the best free agent target for the Bears. You could say T. Higgins if you look at all the free agents as number 1. Well, the Bears aren't signing T. Higgins. He's a receiver. They don't need to swing big for a receiver. This was my contract projection for him. ESPN had the report the other day that the teams expect the Bears to be in on Trey Smith. 22 a year, it would reset the guard market. I think that's what you need to do with him. And I think he's worth it because he's been a stalwart on that offensive line. He's gotten better every single year in Kansas City. And something that we haven't talked about with Trey Smith that he would bring to this team that you need more of, he's been around winning. At minimum, he will have 2 Super Bowls and maybe 3 if he beats the Eagles. That's valuable. I'd like to get some guys in here who have not only played well in this league, but have won in this league as well. Drew Dalman. PFF projects 4 years, $46 million, $12 million bucks per year. We'll see. Some of their contract projections this year to me have felt wonky. This one makes sense, though. I mean, he'll get upper echelon center money because he's the best one on the market. He's an excellent run blocker. His pass blocking's gotten better. He's not tremendous there, but he's gotten to a point where he's at least average to above average there. Only gave up 2 sacks and had 3 penalties this year. I think he's a pretty darn good player. This plugs 2 holes immediately. Starting center, which I think, even if it's not some incredible, massive upgrade, it's definitely an upgrade over Coleman Shelton. And Trey Smith over the Nate Davis, Matt Pryor situation is a clear upgrade. Like, Trey Smith is a top 5, top 6 guard in this league, which those guys rarely hit the open market. So center to right tackle, you're good if you make these moves. So I would do that right away. And if you're taking what they'd be making per year at face value, you'd be a little less than $50 million. Obviously, the way Poles and his staff can manipulate the contracts if they want to backload them, whatever. You could have more, you could have less, depending on how they negotiate. I'll just kind of put it, you'd be roughly at $50 million in cap after cutting the 2 players and signing these 2 guys, aka still a ton of money to work with the rest of free agency and your draft class. All right, more moves to come in my mock offseason for the Chicago Bears, but I want to tell you guys about today's sponsor. That is Prize Picks. Guys, get in on all of the action for all major sporting events, including the big game coming up. You set lineups of 2 or more players. Pick more, pick less on the stat projections available with Prize Picks. If you have football players, you've got receiving yards, passing yards, touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, passing touchdowns, whatever the case may be. Pick more, pick less. If you're using a basketball player in your lineup, points, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, hockey, goals, etc., assists. Pick more, pick less. You can win up to 1,000 times your money on certain lineups with Prize Picks right now. Yes, that's $10 turning into $10,000 if you win. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS to get a $50 bonus when you play for just $5 if you're a new customer. And how about this deal? Half a passing yard for Patrick Mahomes. I'm a big fan of 2-player lineups because they're easier to hit. I love it in this case because you're already halfway home to a win. Pair that with something else, and you are going to win some money. Again, if you play for just $5 as a new customer, doesn't even matter if you win or lose that first lineup that you submit. You're going to get an additional $50 into your account for free play. Check out Prize Picks today. Link is in the comments and in the description. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS right now. Okay, maybe a little controversial here. How about sign Chase Young? Chase Young has been connected to the Bears seemingly forever. Years ago, because Justin Fields played with them. Last year at the trade deadline, they opted to trade for Montez Sweat instead. Last offseason, because he was a free agent and he had familiarity with Montez Sweat. And I think again here, because A, he had a pretty good season last year, and B, he played under Dennis Allen last year. I think this is a contract projection that I've put together that makes sense for both parties. 2 years, $30 million, $15 a year. You get 18.5 guaranteed, so you get 1 full guaranteed year and a little on the second year. So if it doesn't work out, he at least gets a little extra coin for that second year. He was 7th in the NFL in pressures, guys. Like, that's pretty damn good. Now, he only had 5.5 sacks, but, like, if you told me right now, hey, Chase Young's going to give you 5 to 8 sacks, and he's going to pressure the quarterback consistently, I get it. His motor at times has been questioned. He's hit and miss against the run, but, like, you don't need him to dominate. $15 million, just go be a good player. You've played with Sweat before. You've played under Dennis Allen. His measurables fit what Dennis Allen likes. He can start opposite of Montez Sweat. DeMarcus Walker can be that number 5 defensive lineman that he always should have been when they brought him in here, which is a great role for him because he can play all along the defensive line. You feel a lot better about that group, and he played all 17 games last year. We talked about the familiarity with Dennis Allen's scheme, playing with Montez Sweat. They seem pretty tight. I kind of had soured on Chase Young because when he went to the 49ers, there were some effort issues, didn't play that well. Kind of signed a 1-year prove-it deal with New Orleans, played pretty well. Stayed healthy, top 10 in pressures, decent sack production. I'm in. He's only 25. It feels like he's 30. He's 25 years old. You might still be able to find a long-term piece here. So I think a 2-year deal is fair, and it kind of leaves you with, in a better spot entering the draft. Like, okay, we don't have to go pass rusher here if we don't love the board or whatever the case may be. You'd still have about $35 million in cap space if you made this move. Kind of all in. Kind of all in on this if the price tag isn't too hefty. Okay, subscribe to the channel. Full Bears offseason coverage coming at you here at Chicago Bears Now. Latest news, rumors, coaching staff additions, mock drafts, free agency. It's heating up. Stick with us here on Chicago Bears Now. Okay, trade down from number 10 and draft Tyler Booker. Daniel Jeremiah in his recent mock draft had the Bears taking Booker at 10, which I'd be okay with. I don't think it's incredible value. I think he's probably more worthy of like 15 to 20 right now, 15 to 25. But if you took him at 10, it's a safe, solid pick. Trading down would be ideal, though. Like if you could trade down to like 16, 18, if a team's willing to move up and then get him there, maybe add a second or third round pick. Again, I think that's the sweet spot in this draft. Then you've really kind of loaded up on your offensive line. We already talked about Trey Smith and Drew Dalman. Now you add Tyler Booker. Do we have that, what the offensive line could look like here if you end up making that move? I mean, this is pretty good, man. Braxton Jones, Tyler Booker, Drew Dalman, Trey Smith, Darnell Wright. I mean, no one's putting that group in Canton, but it's a lot better than what you've had. And, we could debate Braxton Jones. I think if he's healthy, he's an average to above average left tackle. And if he goes from being a guy you need out there to, he's the weak link, you're feeling a lot better. I think the interior needs to take the priority. I can live with Braxton Jones for one more year now. If you told me that they signed Ronnie Stanley or they draft Will Campbell, Josh Simmons, Kelvin Banks to upgrade, I'm not going to complain about it. I just think the interior was the bigger issue last year. Now, the one thing that I don't have access to that the Bears do is what exactly Braxton Jones' medical status is. Is he going to miss a lot of the offseason? Is he going to be ready for training camp? If those things are in question, okay, then left tackle becomes a bigger issue. But if you told me that you get Tyler Booker, Trey Smith, and Drew Dalman this offseason to pair with Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones, upgrade left tackle next year, maybe Karan Amagaji pushes Jones this year. Who knows? Maybe you sign someone else to push him. I would be pretty happy with that outcome if that's how it ended up playing out. Who should the Bears draft in round 1? I like the trade down for Booker scenario. Obviously, it's not like I'm all in on that scenario. I'm flexible here. What say you? Let me know in the comment section below. Okay, and then something I've said for weeks now is I want to take a running back on the second day. Second round, third round, wherever it is. I think that's the sweet spot for the running backs in this draft. Everybody loves Ashton Genty, me included. I was tweeting highlights of him in September, and then everybody got on the train. I'd rather go a trenches player in round 1, all things equal, because look at all these guys. Most of these guys, if not all of them, maybe Hampton goes round 1. We'll see. A lot of these guys are going to be available when the Bears pick at 39, 41, and some will be available when they pick at 72, like Devin Neal and Ollie Gordon and Damian Martinez, who's a stud, and Judkins and Henderson could fall to the third round. So I'd like to end up with one of these players on day 2, pair with DeAndre Swift, and I just got to think, knowing where Ben Johnson comes from, Dan Campbell, hard-nosed, wanting to run the football. I think everybody thinks Ben Johnson is just this finesse trick play guy. Obviously, he's going to work that into his play calling. He wants to run the football. They paid David Montgomery twice and drafted Jahmyr Gibbs top 15 for a reason, because they want to run the football with different type of backs. That's why I want a physical downhill runner to pair with DeAndre Swift. That would be my ideal scenario. I'd be shocked if Johnson didn't push for this with Ryan Poles to get someone on day 2 of the NFL draft to pair with his current running back. Just some other moves. Go a little rapid fire. I like the idea of Marquise Brown on a cheap 1 or 2 year deal, $6 to $8 million per year. He missed most of the season with injury. Shouldn't cost you a ton. I think a Kyler Gordon extension makes a lot of sense. You should have some extra salary cap there. You can get that done. Is he a $10 million a year player? I'm not sure as a nickel. I would rather do it now than after this year because I think he's really going to be unlocked with Dennis Allen. Draft competition at left tackle. Like I said, I don't think you have to fix left tackle, but there's some guy in the 3rd, 4th round, if you get a 4th round pick that you think is intriguing. I don't know, an Emory Jones at LSU. I know he played right tackle there. Someone like that who had a down year this year but was previously thought of as a high-level player. I'd be open to that. That also depends on how they feel about Amagaji. Draft a defensive tackle on day 2. Really just defensive lineman. Even if you get a Chase Young, I think adding somebody to that front 4 is going to be important. And then get some depth at tight end, whether it's in free agency, the draft, whatever. Maybe it's one of each. If it's the draft, probably day 3. Free agency, who's the best blocking free agent tight end? That's who I want. It can't cost that much. Maybe it's Mercedes Lewis for another year. I don't know. If it is, he's going to be your tight end 3 at his age, obviously. But, the last 2 years, Robert Tonyan and Gerald Everett have been complete whiffs. Maybe some of that's coaching. I don't know. But you got to get better behind Cole Kmet because you've just asked him to be your blocker, your receiving tight end. Then this year didn't even throw to him. It was just bizarre. There you go. Grade my mock off season. A, B, C, D, or F. How do you guys think I did? What would you do differently? Let me know in the comment section below. And hit that subscribe button. We will continue to bring you guys videos on a daily basis here on this channel. So subscribe to Chicago Bears Now. My name is Harrison Graham. We appreciate you guys for tuning in.